I only ever saw her on Tuesday mornings. The coffee shop wasn't special. 2 bright lights, scratched wooden tables, the smell of ground beans that lingered on your clothes longer than you wanted. But it was quiet, and it opened early, which meant I could sit with my laptop and pretend I had work to do before the day actually began. She always arrived around 7:10. Never late. Never early. The kind of punctuality that came from years of being needed by other people. Her name was Ms. Han, though everyone else called her Unseol. I only knew the Ms. version because she was my friend's mom's coworker, some loose social connection where we were technically strangers but familiar enough to nod at each other. I think that's why her presence made me pause. It felt like she belonged to a part of life I wasn't old enough to understand yet. The first time she smiled at me, it was small, almost an afterthought, but it stuck. Like a leaf on your windshield you keep meaning to brush off. This morning started like all the others. I was nursing a cup of lukewarm Americano, scrolling through the same unread emails, pretending I wasn't waiting for that familiar soft sound of the door opening. When it finally creaked, I didn't look up right away. I didn't want to seem obvious. But I felt her before I saw her, that quiet shift in the room when someone you've been unknowingly orbiting steps inside. "Good morning," she said, passing my table on her way to the counter. Her voice always sounded like she was halfway through a thought. "Morning," I managed, though it came out softer than I intended. She ordered the same thing, black coffee, no sugar. And she always folded the paper sleeve exactly once before slipping it on the cup, a tiny habit, but I watched it every week. A micro-ritual that told me she wasn't as composed as she looked. I'd only spoken to her twice before. Small talk. Weather. The baker forgetting her change. Nothing you would remember unless you wanted to. Today, she paused beside my table. "You're here early," she said. "I couldn't sleep," I replied, then instantly regretted sounding too honest. She didn't comment. Just nodded, eyes drifting to my still full cup. "Coffee helps. Sometimes." I almost laughed. "Sometimes it makes it worse." That earned a real smile, brief, quick, but warm enough that I felt it in my throat. She sat a table away. Not close enough to invite a conversation, not far enough to avoid one. I caught her glancing at my screen once, not nosy, just curious. Like she wanted to understand what I was working so hard to look busy with. I wasn't lonely, not in the dramatic way people write about. But I had habits that gave me away. Typing out texts I never sent, refreshing chats that stayed silent, pausing before answering phone calls, hoping the person would hang up first. She stayed for 20 minutes, stirring a coffee that didn't need stirring. Her eyes looked tired in a clean, unremarkable way, like she'd made peace with it years ago. When she stood to leave, she hesitated. "Take care today," she said, lightly touching the back of the chair beside me. Not me, just the chair. Still, I felt it. "You too," I answered. She walked out with that same calm pace she always had. But 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. Just one line. "If you're still there, can you come outside?" I froze, thumb hovering above the screen, heart beating in places I didn't realize were still paying attention. And that was how everything started. I found her outside, standing near the edge of the parking lot. Not waiting in a dramatic way, no pacing, no wringing hands. She was just there. Like she'd stepped out for air and only afterward realized she wanted someone with her. When she saw me, she let out a quiet breath, almost a laugh, like she wasn't sure she'd actually expected me to come. "Sorry," she said. "That was impulsive." "It's okay," I replied, even though I wasn't sure it was. She held her coffee with both hands, letting the steam reach her face. The morning was colder than it looked. "I didn't want to go to work yet," she admitted. That's all. It wasn't much, but it was the most personal thing she'd ever said to me. A small truth, but I felt it land. We walked toward the curb together, either of us leading. Her steps were careful, like she was thinking between each one. She stopped by a bench that looked older than both of us combined. "Mind sitting?" she asked. I shook my head and followed. The bench creaked under our weight, leaning slightly to one side. She set her coffee down beside her ankle, folding her hands in her lap, another tiny habit I'd started to recognize. Whenever she didn't know what to do with her emotions, her fingers found each other. "You're close with your mom?" she asked suddenly. It caught me off guard. "Yeah. Mostly," I said. "Why?" "You remind me of her son," she added quickly. "Not in a bad way. Just, you're thoughtful. You notice things." I wasn't sure how to respond. I didn't know her well enough to know whether that was a compliment or a warning. "There's a reason I don't talk much in there," she continued. "People assume quiet means cold. It usually just means careful." Her eyes stayed ahead, focusing on cars passing by. "Careful about what?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she lifted her coffee, took a sip, and winced at the temperature. "Getting too close to people who expect things from me," she said finally. Something in my chest tightened. Maybe because I'd been imagining scenarios since the first time she smiled at me, unintentional stories my mind kept writing on its own. And suddenly they all felt obvious, dangerous, almost childish. "I don't expect anything," I said quietly. She looked at me then, really looked. Her gaze wasn't soft or warm. It held a kind of tired honesty, like she'd been waiting for someone to say that and wishing they wouldn't. "That's what makes it complicated," she murmured. The age gap sat between us like a third person. So did the fact that she knew my friend's family. And that she was divorced, something I knew only because my mom had mentioned it once, casually, like sharing the weather. She didn't bring any of that up, but we both felt it. "I should go," she said, standing. She reached for her coat but fumbled with the sleeve. Without thinking, I helped. Just a small gesture, my fingers brushing her wrist. She froze, only for a breath, and then smiled in that careful way she had. "Thank you," she said. I nodded, but inside something shifted. Something I didn't have the right words for yet. Later, when I replayed the moment, I realized why it stuck with me. Maybe it was the first time I felt like someone finally saw me, and didn't look away. I didn't see her the next Tuesday. At first, I told myself she was busy. Meetings. Traffic. A morning she just didn't feel like coffee. But when Wednesday passed with the same empty doorway, something inside me tightened, not panic, just that familiar pinch of noticing an absence too much. I found myself checking the time more than usual. Half reading the same paragraph. Leaving my cup untouched until it went cold. By Thursday, even the barista noticed. "You're looking at the door a lot," she said, wiping the counter. "Waiting for someone?" I hesitated. "No. Just habit." A lie, but a small one. She raised an eyebrow like she didn't believe me, but she didn't push. I stayed longer than I needed to, pretending to write something, phone face down on the table. I kept imagining her outside the window again, hands wrapped around a paper cup, unsure whether she wanted someone to join her. But the door stayed still. When I finally packed up, I saw her, not in the shop, but across the street. Standing in front of the pharmacy. Her posture was different, shoulders slightly hunched, hand pressed to her temple like she had a headache that wouldn't let go. Before I could convince myself to leave her be, I called out, "Ms. Hahn?" She stiffened at her name, then slowly turned. Her expression softened when she recognized me, but there was something guarded in her eyes, like she wished she'd had a few more seconds to prepare. "Oh," she said. "You're here. You okay?" "Just picking something up." She held a small paper bag, crumpled slightly from her grip. A pause stretched between us, the kind that felt like it was waiting for one of us to make a mistake. "I didn't see you this week," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Her gaze flicked away. "I needed some space." "From what? From who?" I didn't ask. I didn't have the right. She looked like she was about to step back, but then she stopped herself. Her fingers tightened around the bag. A small hesitation, barely there. "Walk with me," she asked. We moved together down the street, not touching, not speaking much. She walked slower than usual, as if her thoughts were heavy enough to pull her steps down. People talk, she said suddenly. About what? Anything. Everything. Doesn't matter if it's true. She shrugged, but it wasn't casual, it was protective. Was someone talking about us? Had someone seen us? I didn't know. But the implication hung in the air. I don't want to complicate your life, she added. You're not, I said too quickly. She gave a small, sad smile. You don't know that. We reached the corner where our paths split. She stopped, turning toward me so slowly it felt deliberate. Can I ask something? She said. Anything. Why did you come over earlier? When I texted you to come outside. I opened my mouth, but the answer caught. Because I wondered about you. Because I felt something I shouldn't. Because I wanted to. Instead, I said nothing. She stepped closer, close enough that her coat brushed my arm. Her breath was warm in the cold air. She looked up at me like she was searching for something, a sign, permission, a mistake she could blame on the moment. For a second, we leaned the same way. Her hand lifted, barely, like a reflex, hovering near my collar. Then she pulled back, breath stuttering. This is... She didn't finish. But we both knew the word. A mistake. And yet neither of us moved away. We didn't talk for 2 days after that moment on the corner. The almost, the half-breath, the way her hand hovered like it wanted something she wouldn't let herself reach for. I kept replaying it, not the closeness, but the pullback. Not rejection, hesitation. A fear that felt older than me, heavier than us. On Friday evening I saw her again. Not in the cafe, not by accident. She was sitting on a bench near the bus stop, hands folded tightly in her lap, staring at the glow of the streetlights like they were telling her something she didn't want to hear. I didn't mean to approach her. I just did. You're out late, I said quietly. She startled, then relaxed when she recognized me. Something in her shoulders dropped. Relief? Or resignation? I didn't want to go home yet, she said. It's too quiet there. The way she said it made something in me twist. Not pity. Recognition. I sat beside her, careful not to brush her sleeve. She didn't move away, but she didn't lean in either. We existed in that thin space between caution and want. We watched cars hum past. A couple laughed somewhere behind us. The evening was breezy enough that a strand of hair kept falling across her cheek. She kept tucking it back, a little irritated, a little distracted. Finally, she exhaled. Long honest. I saw you with someone, she said. My mind stuttered. Who? That girl from the cafe. The one with the braid. I blinked. She's the barista. I know. Her fingers tangled together. I still saw. Jealousy. Not wild or dramatic, just a quiet, reluctant admission that slipped out before she could catch it. She was asking if I wanted an extra stamp card. I said. That's all. I didn't say it meant anything. But her voice betrayed her. Soft. Too soft. Silence settled again, the kind that felt like it was trying to decide whether to protect us or ruin us. You're young, she said. You should be with someone who doesn't have to think so much. I don't want someone else. She flinched, barely, but I saw it. Don't say things like that, she whispered. Why not? Because I'll believe you. Her voice cracked on the last word, small enough that anyone else might have missed it. I didn't. She looked at her hands like she'd never seen them before. I've spent years keeping things stable. Predictable. Safe. And now She stopped. Pressed her lips together. Started again. And now I don't trust myself around you. A confession disguised as self-control. I turned slightly, enough that she would feel the shift even if she refused to look at me. You don't have to trust yourself, I said quietly. Just be honest. She inhaled sharply, like that word hit somewhere fragile. I am being honest, she said. Too honest, maybe. Her eyes finally met mine, tired, longing, terrified of the exact same thing I was hoping for. She lifted a hand again, the same way she had on the corner. Not touching me, just reaching, testing the air between us. A question, not a gesture. Her fingertips hovered an inch from my cheek. Then she whispered, barely audible, "What are we doing?" The night held its breath with us. The next week, she didn't come to the cafe. Not Tuesday. Not Wednesday. Not Thursday. I told myself she was busy, that she was giving us space, that adults with real responsibilities didn't orbit around coffee shop routines the way I did. But the truth was simpler. I felt the shift before I understood it. By Friday, I stopped pretending. I went at the same time, sat at the same table, ordered the same lukewarm Americano, and for the first time in months, I felt like a stranger in a place that used to feel shared. I didn't text her. She didn't text me. The silence wasn't loud. It was intentional. On Saturday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Not a message, a notification from a mutual friend. A photo from a small gathering, people smiling around a restaurant table. And there she was, next to a man. He wasn't holding her. He wasn't touching her. He didn't have to. The distance between them looked familiar. Careful. The same quiet caution she'd used with me. I stared at the photo longer than I should have, zooming in, searching for something, discomfort, detachment, anything. But she just looked composed. Polite. Pleasant. It shouldn't have mattered. It shouldn't have meant anything. But it hit deeper than jealousy. It was the feeling of having misread an entire chapter. I almost texted her then. Almost. But what would I even say? Do you miss me? Was I imagining everything? Should I never have come outside that day? Instead, I did nothing. Later, around dusk, I walked by the bench near the bus stop, the one where she told me she didn't trust herself around me. She wasn't there, but her absence felt more present than her company ever did. I sat anyway. The wind was cold. Cars passed the same way they always had. After a long while, a message appeared on my screen. From her. Just one line. "I hope you're doing well." No punctuation. No warmth. No opening. I typed back immediately. I didn't even think. "Are you okay?" 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Stopped. Then nothing. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. 20. Still nothing. I didn't send my message. I watched it sit there, ready but unsent, like it was holding its breath with me. A kind of emotional whiplash settled in, the pull and release of wanting someone who kept stepping backward into shadows you didn't know existed. Later that night, my mom mentioned something casually while washing dishes. "Unseol's daughter came home this week," she said. "Apparently, they'd been trying to work things out. A lot going on." I nodded, pretending I didn't feel something inside tilt slightly off balance. I hadn't known she had a daughter old enough to be coming home. I hadn't known they weren't speaking. I hadn't known anything, really. Maybe that was the point. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence that I didn't plan on seeing her again. Not because I didn't want to, because wanting her had started to feel like touching something with a crack in it. One wrong move, and it'd split open. But life has its own timing. It happened on a Monday evening. I'd stopped by the small grocery near my apartment to buy instant ramen. My head was somewhere else, replaying her unsent replies, the ache of that hanging bubble, when I saw her near the fruit section. She looked tired, in a way that didn't ask for sympathy. Just a kind of lived-in exhaustion, like she'd spent the weekend holding too many things together. She saw me, froze for half a heartbeat, then offered a small, uncertain smile. "Hi," she said, barely above a whisper. "Hi." We stood there between oranges and green tea bottles, both pretending we didn't remember the silence between us. She spoke first. "I got your message. I didn't know what to say." "You didn't have to say anything," I replied. But my voice betrayed me, too quick, too careful. She heard it. She stepped closer, adjusting the sleeve of her coat like it gave her something to do. I wasn't avoiding you. Not exactly. What were you doing then? Trying to decide what kind of person I want to be, she said softly. And what I can't afford to repeat. I didn't understand at first. Not fully. Then, your daughter? Her shoulders tensed. Not in anger, in truth. We haven't spoken properly in months, she said. She moved out after a fight. She thinks I choose people too quickly. Misread situations. Mix loneliness with affection. She laughed once quietly, without humor. Maybe she's right. I swallowed. It felt like the air between us thickened. You think that's what this is? I asked. Loneliness? She looked up. Really looked. Her eyes softened, and for a second I thought she might step back. Instead, she stayed. No, she said. That's the problem. Silence again, but not the heavy kind. The kind that cracks something open. We ended up walking outside together, groceries in hand. At the crosswalk, she stopped. The streetlights painted her face in a soft gold, and she looked human. Not composed. Not careful. Just a woman trying to figure out her own heart without hurting anyone in the process. Can I be honest? She asked. You always can. She breathed in deeply. If I let this become something more, I'm afraid it will cost me more than I can give right now. My relationship with my daughter. My sense of stability. She hesitated, voice thinning. My ability to keep my life simple. I nodded. Okay. She blinked, surprised. Okay? I'm here, I said. I'm not pushing you. I'm not asking you to choose anything right now. I just don't want to pretend I don't care. Her eyes glistened, not tears, just emotion finally unclenching. She stepped closer. Slowly. Deliberately. And in the glow of the streetlight, she placed her hand gently on my arm. A small touch. Barely there. But it felt like the first honest thing between us in weeks. Thank you, she whispered. For not making this harder. I shook my head. I'm not going anywhere. She nodded once, like she needed that more than she'd admit. Then she gave me the smallest smile, tired, sincere, and alive. A simple human, okay. Time didn't rush for them. It never had. If anything, it moved the way he did, steady, deliberate, leaving room for breath. Weeks drifted by after that night on her doorstep, the one where everything felt like it could fall apart or finally fall into place. Instead of choosing speed, they chose presence. He kept showing up at 8:47 a.m. again. Not every day, but often enough that she started setting her mug out 5 minutes earlier, just in case. She stopped pretending she preferred tea over coffee. Some mornings she took his extra cup of black coffee without comment, and he didn't remind her that she once swore it tasted like burnt decisions. Their routines didn't collide. They blended. Some evenings they shared dinner, but sometimes they didn't. Some mornings they walked together, other days they let the silence between them stretch into something roomy, something safe. When she pulled away to handle things with her past, he didn't press. When he went quiet about his own fears, she didn't demand explanations. They simply stayed. The old bench, the one that saw everything from awkward greetings to almost confessions, became a kind of unspoken landmark. They sat there again one cloudy Saturday, sharing roasted chestnuts from a paper bag. Their shoulders brushed, but neither pulled back. There wasn't tension anymore. Just warmth. The earned kind. Do you regret any of it? She asked eventually, not looking at him. He shook his head. No. I think, sometimes things take the long way around to make sense. She smiled at that, small, private. The kind of smile someone gives when they believe you, finally. Life didn't become perfect for them. They still argued. Still misunderstood each other. She still woke too early. He still drank coffee so strong it threatened structural stability. But the sharp edges between them softened. Not erased, just softened enough to hold without hurting. One evening, months later, they found themselves in his kitchen after a long day. She was leaning on the counter, he was rinsing dishes, and the radio was playing a song neither of them knew. She made some small comment about how tired she was. He handed her a towel to dry her hands. Simple. Ordinary. And yet, something settled. He looked at her. Really looked. Not with hesitation. Not with fear. But with quiet recognition, like he'd finally arrived at a place he'd been walking toward for a long time without knowing the name of it. She stepped closer, resting her forehead softly against his collarbone, and he let his hand rest on her back. No confession. No dramatic moment. Just two people choosing the same thing at the same time. Okay? He murmured. She nodded. Yeah. Okay. Later, when he walked her home, they passed their bench. She tapped the armrest lightly, almost like a thank you. He didn't ask why. He understood. Some love doesn't announce itself. It just takes shape, slowly, deliberately, until one day you notice you're living in it. And that was enough. More than enough. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?